I'm Zach LeBeau for Evotion Media, and today we're talking revolution with Adam Krellenstein. Adam studied mathematics, physics, and philosophy at Hampshire College. You researched non-minimally coupled inflation and Kaluza-Klein black holes.
Yes, that's right.
Adam is the co-founder of Counterparty, its lead developer, and the chief architect of the Counterparty protocol. Is that synonymous with the Bitcoin protocol? Are they one and the same?
No, the Counterparty protocol really is an extension to the Bitcoin protocol. It takes all the features of Bitcoin and then adds on a whole new set of features, and that's why it's sometimes called Bitcoin 2.0.
So it's actually not the Bitcoin protocol.
No, so Bitcoin has a network and it has a protocol and a currency. And what Counterparty does is it uses the same network and it piggybacks on top of it to add a bunch of new features and thereby extends its functionality into peer-to-peer finance rather than just peer-to-peer payments.
Because I mean that's what the definition of Counterparty is. It's that other party, that other institution in a financial transaction.
Yeah, you're a party and there's a counterparty to every party in the transaction. And with Counterparty, the network itself is the counterparty. You're trading against the network, you're trading against everyone in the network simultaneously.
Is that the primary or the sole function of Counterparty? Is it to be a financial instrument?
Counterparty was originally conceived just as a vehicle to implement a number of financial instruments, basic financial instruments. Trustless trade, derivatives, creation of digital tokens, and so on. But since then, it's sort of evolved to become more. Just this past week, we announced that we've implemented a smart contracts platform.
I saw that. You actually put, you used part of Ethereum's protocol to showcase how it would work on Can you talk a little bit about that?
So what we did was we took Ethereum's implementation of the smart contract system and then ported it over to Bitcoin using Counterparty. So we took some of their code and we wrapped it and we altered it and modified it so that it would work with Bitcoin and with Counterparty instead of working on the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum is really one feature, the smart contracts platform, and a new blockchain. And what we did is we took the primary feature and we moved it onto Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain is the ledger, which records all of the transactions.
So where does Counterparty go from there? You're now moving into the smart contract space.
Yeah, we're working closely with a number of companies that are building on top of Counterparty, that are building businesses using the creation of digital tokens, that are using the smart contracts platform, that are using a bunch of different features of Counterparty to revolutionize finance.
You know, I was wondering about this. I seem to use the words protocol and platform interchangeably. Is that appropriate, or are they two very separate things?
They're different. A platform can be built around a protocol, and a protocol can even act as a platform over time. Can evolve into a platform. HTTP is a protocol. You type HTTP:// and then a URL, and that's one of the protocols around which the platform of the modern web was built. The platform being an ecosystem of software, a set of standards, including protocols, all software that works together in a certain way, that is considered a certain foundation on which to build new technologies and new businesses.
I guess how and why did you come up with the idea for Counterparty?
So Bitcoin, as I said, is really those two things, that currency and the network. And the revolutionary part about Bitcoin really isn't the currency. The currency itself is remarkable. It's digital gold, and it's digital gold tied to a very modern payment mechanism. But the real revolution was the distributed consensus mechanism. That's the algorithm and the system by which a number of parties all come to consensus on the same ledger, given their differing biases, given that they may have differing incentives. They might even have competing incentives. And they all come to consensus. They're all incentivized within the system to come to consensus on the history of a ledger. And what Counterparty, the idea was to take that ledger and then add more features to it, to be able to expand it to its full potential, rather than just having a currency and a payment protocol, also having all of peer-to-peer finance, having a smart contract platform, being able to have distributed applications of all kinds, in which users around the world are able to collaborate and trade in a trustless, disintermediated fashion, rather than the way they do now, which is through middlemen and with high barriers to entry for lots of processes.
Well, I was going to ask about that because, I mean, this peer-to-peer interaction, financially, it really does begin to usurp all of these long-standing financial power bases. Do you think this transition from this centralized construct to the decentralized platforms and protocols, is that going to be smooth? Is it going to happen no matter what because it's sort of like a technological survival of the fittest or a natural selection?
No, yeah, I don't think it'll be particularly smooth, and probably one of the better analogies to what's happening with Bitcoin and money and counterparty and peer-to-peer finance is what happened with the music industry, with Napster and the traditional record distribution model through brick and mortar stores, and from Napster to iTunes, and that shift, which was fundamentally about a technological innovation. The ability to download, to encode and download music and distribute it to users very easily was very disruptive to the existing industry. Revenues, as I understand it, revenues for the sales of albums has fallen dramatically since before Napster to post iTunes. And similarly, the transition from snail mail to email was disruptive to the incumbents. And I wouldn't be surprised if it were the same way here. People like to liken it last year, to the internet in 1994.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because I was wondering what your thoughts are about this. Is this something where, is it akin to the internet boom of the late 90s that ended in a subsequent bubble, or are we talking about something much more substantial, some sort of revolutionary or socioeconomic revolution type scenario?
We're not at the bubble stage yet in terms of mass adoption and mass awareness. The internet bubble of 1999-2000 was really a bubble of mass awareness, and the public isn't generally aware of Bitcoin. It certainly isn't using it. It certainly isn't very excited about it.
Well, what's interesting to me is, unlike that internet bubble, it seems to me that, there are around Bitcoin, around these protocols that are emerging, there seems to be a lot of passion. It's not just about technology. It seems to be a lot about ideology. It seems to be a lot about, political inclination. I mean, it seems like it's more of a power to the people type movement.
I mean, so I wasn't really around for the early days of the internet, but I imagine it was roughly the same. The possibly it's stronger now. Yes, that's true. With Bitcoin, you get a lot of political ideology backing its development. You get, on one hand, perhaps the libertarian gold bug side. Mm-hmm. A lot of people see it as a better version of gold, and on the other hand, you see a lot of futurist and technologist positions. With the internet bubble, you heard lots of talk about a new paradigm and I don't know if they use this word, disintermediation and openness and freedom, and information wants to be free, and a new era. It's sort of similar, I think.
It's funny. I just saw a clip. It was a mainstream news organization, MSNBC or Fox News or something, and usually when you see news about Bitcoin from these mainstream news entities, it's all about Bitcoin as the currency. Mm-hmm. Yes. But this one was about the blockchain. It was about the protocol, which I haven't seen mainstream news outlets talk about before. And certainly a year ago, you never would have seen that. But now people are starting, the mainstream starting to talk more about Bitcoin as a protocol. In just 1 year, where do you think we're going to be next year?
I think that you'll see a lot of new applications come up around this technology. Counterparty is one of them. As I said, I think that's the real revolution. It's not the currency. That said, the currency obviously drives a lot of interest and hype because it's understandable. It's a currency that was made up on the internet and now has value. And the platform is sort of harder to understand. It's not as mature. You can buy things. You can go to Dell.com and buy a laptop with Bitcoin, the currency, without knowing anything about the protocol. And there aren't any applications that use the blockchain for anything besides that have reached anywhere near the same level of adoption or ease of use. That said, I would be very surprised if that weren't the case, if that didn't change in the next year or so.
You know, I noticed that Counterparty uses its own proprietary currency, XCP.
I don't know if I would call it proprietary. We did create a new currency. The way that people created it was destroying Bitcoin, actually. And so there was no centralized control over the currency. Never did the creators ever have any control over the currency that anyone else didn't. It's sort of like with Bitcoin. Bitcoins are created by mining them, which is a process by which you solve mathematical calculations on your computer. And when you come up with a solution, you get to broadcast to the network, and the network recognizes that as the creation of new tokens. So just as with Bitcoin, you destroy energy and create Bitcoins, with Counterparty, you destroy Bitcoins and create XCP.
And you destroy the Bitcoins by sending them to
an unspendable address.
Right.
An address for which there is obviously no private key. So.
Why didn't you just use Bitcoin? Why create your own version?
You can't. So Counterparty, as a protocol for peer-to-peer finance, does support using Bitcoin wherever possible. You can, for instance, create a new token without spending any XCP. That said, for a lot of the advanced functionality, you need a new currency which is aware of the protocol, which can be escrowed by the protocol. Bitcoin users aren't aware of Counterparty because Counterparty is a layer on top of it, and so, or they're not necessarily aware of it. So you can't use Bitcoin the same way that you can use a native currency.
Would Counterparty exist without Bitcoin?
No, absolutely not. We really are trying to do incremental improvements to Bitcoin. That's the basic idea of Counterparty. Whereas lots of other projects in this space tend to start from scratch and reinvent the wheel and build a whole new blockchain with a couple tweaks. We've instead taken Bitcoin as the starting point and then made evolutionary adjustments to it to improve it.
So recreating the wheel, so to speak, are you seeing that as being disadvantageous? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The history of software development is the history of the successive projects which work in evolutionary incremental steps rather than trying to start from scratch with a more elegant ideal model. There's a famous adage, worse is better in software development, and that's absolutely true. Surprising though it may be. It's with Counterparty, the code base can be smaller, our development can be much faster, the security issues are much fewer, all because we use Bitcoin as a firm foundation off of which to build. We let Bitcoin handle all of the difficult stuff, and all we do is add on to it. But in doing so, we add on huge features that Bitcoin itself can't come close to supporting.
You know, I hear some people talk about scalability issues for Bitcoin in the future. Is that a concern?
It's a distant concern. I think that's maybe putting the cart before the horse.
Okay.
Bitcoin isn't near really its own limits, and there are a number of very good plans from the Bitcoin core developers to alter Bitcoin in subtle ways to make it dramatically more scalable than it is now.
I mean, you would think with technological advancements happening at an exponential level, that somehow these concerns would be figured out.
Yeah, and that's part of our approach is the incremental approach. We deal with the present problem and try and solve it and try and release it, release early, release often, and we don't try and get hung up on potential issues later, because that's right. The space is moving so fast that if you try and the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you keep on trying to build a perfect system with no scalability issues, you'll never release.
Because of this exponential acceleration, it's really difficult, isn't it, to see what's going to be happening 5-10 years down the line.
The time horizon of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency developers and entrepreneurs is measured in months. You can never look beyond that, and that's in keeping with historical trends. Look at the smartphone revolution and how much faster it happened than the desktop revolution, the PC revolution.
Right.
the cryptocurrency revolution will happen much faster than all previous revolutions, simply because it happened later.
Yeah, I saw that this man actually put a microchip in his hand to store his Bitcoin.
That's a good idea.
Would you do that?
I'm not a medical doctor. Would I do that? No. You can actually memorize the key to your Bitcoins, and I've done that. If you're careful about it and you know what you're doing, you can securely store Bitcoins by memorizing 12 common English words in sequence. And if you do that, you can. There's perhaps no more secure way of storing Bitcoins than that.
Than in your own memory.
Yeah, someone could steal a chip out of the guy's hand in his sleep.
True.
Whereas it's more difficult to extract something out of someone's memory only.
When did you get involved with Bitcoin?
2011. 2011.
Did you immediately see its application, or was it a slow process? Was it like a light going off in your
I was
head?
initially skeptical of the economics. I remember that.
Why is that?
Because they're fundamentally deflationary. There were a couple misunderstandings I had initially, which I eventually corrected. The first was that Bitcoin is deflationary, therefore no one will use it as a currency because holders of Bitcoin are incentivized to hold Bitcoin rather than spend it, the way they are in an inflationary economy. I mean, the Austrian economics, a school of economics, has a counter for that, which is that there's a time preference for money. People are incentivized to spend money now rather than later. And that's enough to incentivize people to spend money.
Is that what won you over, that philosophy?
So that was half of it, and the other half was that Bitcoin is currently increasing in its money supply. It won't actually probably be the money supply won't slow down in its growth for another decade, and so it doesn't really matter what Bitcoin will do. Eventually, once the supply maxes out. Right now, people are still mining Bitcoins, and the supply is increasing by approximately $1 million a day. And that means that it doesn't really matter for the success of the currency whether or not deflationary economics are a problem.
Because companies such as yourself are launching XCP and other things from it then?
Yeah, now. We're building on it now. And so you can sort of defer the question of the deflationary economics, if you like, until Bitcoin's already succeeded or failed.
And those other applications you were talking about that are being built on Counterparty, what does that look like?
It's all over the place. You see a lot of decentralized Kickstarter applications where
Is that kind of like Vend, for example?
So Vend is a company that we've worked with that does crowd sales. Right. So what they'll do is
I know Jeremy and Jonathan. They're great guys. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. What they'll do is they'll create a token for you. They'll use anyone can create a token with Counterparty very easily. It's 30 seconds and 5 clicks through a web wallet. But what Vend does is it will run the creation of a token and the distribution of a token for a large crowd sale project. So just like with Kickstarter, users can propose a project to the internet and receive funds for the creation of that project.
No,
you can do the same thing.
Well, explain it to me. So you go to counterparty.co, and then
.io,
.io, okay, counterparty.io, and then you open a wallet on counterwallet.io, and then that becomes the interface for you to maneuver through the Counterparty system?
Yes. It's a full interface to the Counterparty network. You can create tokens, you can send those tokens, you can use all the features of Counterparty through that web wallet.
So all these financial instruments, the smart contracts that are coming, all these applications are found through the Counter Wallet interface, and then you maneuver from there.
That's not the only interface. That's absolutely true. But because all the code is open source, anyone can build their own his own interface to Counterparty, his own web wallet, his own client, and so on.
There was a lot of FUD going around with SEC regulations and things like that. How are you coping with that? How are you getting through that? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So the way we're coping with it, the way we're handling this, by being very focused on a particular goal of developing the protocol, and this is open source software for which we receive no money. We have no revenue model. We're an open source foundation. And so we're very focused on that, and that's a good model. Bitcoin can be used for a lot of questionable activities. It can be used for patently illegal activities. But it's still worth developing the Bitcoin protocol. And we're taking the same tack as the Bitcoin developers in doing so. And Counterparty is a very powerful platform which can be used for a lot of amazing things, and some that are indeed questionable. And when it comes to regulation, it's a very complicated issue, and it's largely jurisdictional. Counterparty is a network for the whole world to use, and everyone's on one network trading with everyone else. And that's a powerful model.
How does that work though for Counterparty and yourself when the technology, you're moving so fast, and yet these regulatory bodies, they move so slow, and it's almost as if they can't keep up trying to define and enforce these new ways of regulating because there hasn't been any precedent for them.
Yeah, I imagine that it's hard to keep up. I mean, I don't know. I sometimes look at what happens with something like Airbnb or Uber, which are recent, very successful Silicon Valley startups that are having regulatory issues, but which are moving far faster than the regulators can because they're smaller and nimbler.
So is it something you think that we're actually going to, I mean, a rising tide raises all ships. So
Yeah.
is Counterparty and Bitcoin going to bring the SEC and the regulatory bodies up, or is this an issue? Is this an instance where you feel that the SEC and the regulatory bodies are going to actually be bringing Bitcoin and Counterparty down?
Definitely the former. You can see it in the Senate hearings on digital currency that occurred last fall and winter. I forget which one. It was very clearly expressed by the participants of that hearing that they understood the innovation in Bitcoin and digital currencies. They understood the power of this technology, and they didn't want it all to stifle it. As I understand, regulators are trying very hard to act fairly and reasonably to this new and difficult to understand technology, and trying not to stifle it. That said, Bitcoin and Counterparty together are moving very, very, very fast, and I mean it's hard for anyone to keep up.
So Bitcoin, Counterparty, everyone involved in this space and in this revolution is making for a more progressive and efficient SEC and regulatory body.
Oh yeah, I mean I don't know if I would speak for everyone, but
Okay.
That's my hope.
Excellent. Now, I mean, Evotion, we deal with television, we deal with film, we deal with a number of different types of media. How's Counterparty, for example, going to benefit the artist, the independent filmmaker?
Probably most immediately, the greatest benefit will be in terms of crowdfunding, these crowd sales, where one creates a digital token using Bitcoin technology, using Counterparty technology, and then
through Vend, for example.
Something through yes.
Are they the only one doing this on Counterparty right now?
No, there are others.
There are others.
There are
okay.
others with different focuses. Vend is focused very squarely on the crowd sales. I don't know. Look at the Veronica Mars movie, right? That was funded on Kickstarter
Right.
For $2 million.
Yeah.
I don't know how long ago it was, which was wonderful, by the way. And
so you can do that on Vend and Counterparty.
Yeah, and you can
right.
do it in such a way that you actually are distributing tokens to those backers of the project, the backers of the project.
And what do the backers do with those tokens?
It depends on the particular project. They could have some use as a digital token. They could be redeemable for some reward. They could be.
Are they static? Or do they increase in value, decrease in value? Could they?
Sorry, it depends on the circumstance.
Okay.
It's possible with the Counterparty platform to trade those tokens on the Counterparty distributed exchange.
Any big plans you've got going on now that you want to talk about or announce?
No. We're very excited though.
Okay.
There's a lot of good stuff coming up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at Real Evotion. Visit our website at evotionmedia.com. I'm Zach LeBeau for Talking Revolution.